So we're going to speed run the beginning real quick because this is too relevant to the actual thing we're going to be doing. So start the music. So we start with Celtic and Iberian tribes settling in Iberia, and then we end up with the Carthaginian and Greek settlers. Then Carthage takes southern Iberia, and then the Romans take the rest of Iberia through multiple conquests. Then the Romans collapse, the Visigoths move in. The Visigoths end up losing parts of southern Iberia to the Byzantines, who try and reconquer Rome, who fail. And then we end up with the Arab conquest, pushing all the Christian Visigoths to the north, and the Christian kingdoms then begin a process of reconquest, or reconquista as it is known, until it ends up to the point where we end up with the relevant point in time that we need to be at, with Aragon, Navarre, Castile, Portugal, and Granada all left. And these are the relevant point where we need to be to talk about the Spanish Empire. Speedrun. So we get to the relevant point, 1492, when the Reconquista ends, and this is where our story will pick up, when the last Muslim holdouts of the former Umayyad Caliphate are kicked out of Iberia, and the Reconquista ends because Castile reconquers Iberia. Well, I say Iberia reconquers what's left of the Muslim holdouts of Iberia in southern Iberia. And this ends the Reconquista on the 2nd of January 1492. So at this point it's very relevant that the people who are running the country end up rolling some NAD 20s on their luck and end up in multiple personal unions, and this is just going to be us running through them real quick. So the first ones are with Aragon, which is a big one because that comes also with a multitude of islands within the Mediterranean, a large part of what's left of Iberia, and also with southern Italy being brought under the Spanish throne. Then there is also the one with Austria, which also brings in most of the Holy Roman Empire under the dominance of the Spanish Habsburgs, and this is this is a big boost to the Empire of Spain and pushes it to global power. And also the one with Portugal, after the King of Portugal died after trying to take some parts of North Africa and make a Christian colony there, basically, and he died in battle, and then his throne went to the King of Spain, and this made the Union of Iberia, which we're not going to use because it's better if it says Spain, and also Portugal ain't going to be there for long. So a relevant point is the reason why the Christian world found New World. So why did Spain, Christopher Columbus and all them go and find and look for the New World? And I guess a good important point, because this is relevant to the Spanish Empire and how it grew, and obviously it being the first to find the New World, comes to be a great power of its time. And this is going to be sad, but in short, when the Ottomans finally conquered Constantinople and the last remnants of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, on the 29th of May 1453, it cut all trade to the Black Sea and the Silk Road. And besides Venice, most of the Christian nations didn't want to trade with Muslim nations. It was obviously the thing of the time. Religion was a big thing, and this led to Portugal circumnavigating all of Africa and finding new trade routes to India. But then you had this big brain guy called Christopher Columbus who thought he could go and travel all around the world to get to Asia and to India and China to trade that way, because they thought there was nothing there, and there was a whole pretense where they thought the world was flat and you'd fall off the edge. It was the whole thing. Go and look up, this isn't relevant to this video mainly. All we need to know is that Muslims conquer Constantinople, cut off trade routes, leads to the Christian nations having to find other trade routes, and then they find the New World and new ways to get around Africa. And also, a little fact, it is most likely that if the Spanish didn't find the New World, then they probably would have carried on trying to reconquer North Africa, and they probably would have succeeded, and they would have kept on going, and there probably wasn't going to be a lot stopping them until you get to the Mamluks, and even they would have struggled. So them finding the New World essentially stopped them from invading Africa. Well, Portugal tried and failed, but essentially stopped them from invading Africa for now, and they concentrated all their efforts into colonialism in the New World. So then we get to the point where Christopher Columbus finds the New World on August 3rd, 1492. And this is irrelevant again because this is the point in history where things change. Is it likely that Christians or some nation would have found the New World eventually, besides the Spanish? Yes, very highly. It may have even been the Spanish. It could have been the Portuguese. It could have been the English, the French, anybody. It just depends. It was most likely going to come from Europe, and at the time they were the ones with the most advanced sailing techniques, and most of the Muslim world, or even what was locked up in Central Asia, was not probably going to be able to get to the New World, especially the Ottomans and the Mamluks, as they were more vested in the Indian Ocean, and also to get to the New World for them would have had to meant they had to go through the Mediterranean, and the Ottomans tried, failed. You know the story. So, important information. The first people that they would have seen, Christopher Columbus, when they arrived in the Caribbean and the New World, were, and by the way, I believe to say that Christopher Columbus never actually set foot on Mexico, North America, and South America. He made it to the Caribbean. But the first people he would have met were the Taino, who were Arawak peoples, and they were the people who were the first to see Christopher Columbus and the new people who had come from Europe, Spain, and they are basically all gone. They died of plague, slavery, and all the things that came with the Europeans. And also, a lot of local fauna and wildlife died because the Europeans brought pigs, and pigs literally ate anything, and a lot of things died because of that, because a lot of them ran free. But that's not relevant. Though the reason, if you want to know why they brought pigs, is because pigs are hardy, pigs last, pigs eat anything, and they're easy to look after. They don't die as easily, so they brought pigs. Pigs were good. Pigs were a good source of food. And as for plagues and disease, and the reason why they were brought over, it's because the Europeans carried them but were not affected by them. But the Native Americans were affected by them because they weren't used to them. So a large footnote, especially to this, is in 1493, during Christopher Columbus' second voyage, he founded the first colony of Isabella on the island of Hispaniola. After finding gold there, and he then began to settle in nearby islands such as Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and Cuba in 1511. Now, a large focus of this will be on the New World and in Asia, as this is where most colonialism began for Spain, and this is where the rise of the Spanish Empire was mainly set. The fall is much more European based, but we will have to focus on Europe for some parts. But for now, we're going to focus on the rise, and only the rise, even when Spain loses stuff. We're going to focus on the rise of Spain. And that is, yeah, like I said, with this colonial settlement, the first colonial settlement, and it would go on to expand and keep expanding, and many more would expand. As the Spanish began to obviously colonize more, they came into contact with newer peoples, as such the Mayans and the Aztecs. Now, we all know about the Mayans and the Aztecs, and this video isn't going to larper on about things I cannot do justice in a video like this, and I will do justice in further videos. But for case, the Mayans and the Aztecs were some of the larger groups and more influential groups within Central and North America, Mexico area. And they got conquered, of course, by the Spanish, and they were some of the first to be conquered by the Spanish, or the first peoples to be conquered by the Spanish. And the way they did this was exploiting unruly vassals of the Aztecs. Disease played a big part, and also technological advancements and the fact that they had horses, which many people forget that horses were not native to the New World. Horses hadn't been in the New World maybe for ages, long time. Maybe they were around in the New World, but they had been killed off. And the Spanish came over, they had horses, they had guns, they had armor, they had everything that the Aztecs and the Mayans didn't have. And that's not to say that the Aztecs and the Mayans were backwards people. They were nowhere near that. They were very technologically advanced, and they had some of the biggest cities. And even the Aztec capital was that to rival most European cities. The thing is the Spanish came over, and the Aztecs and the Mayans didn't expect the Spanish. The Aztecs and the Mayans didn't have the same weapons as the Spanish, and also horses and disease didn't really help the Aztecs and the Mayans. Now, what we see is then the collapse of a large amount of civilization within the New World, which is replaced by the Spanish Empire, and it comes in and fills the void that these great nations left, and it pushes north and south, pushing up against deserts and forests, rainforests, and it begins a massive colonial drive. Now, at this point, other countries such as Britain, France, are starting to catch on. They're seeing that there is a new world to discover. The Dutch are breaking away from the Spanish, and the Spanish have their conquest of the Incan Empire, the largest empire in the New World. And again, I will do a separate video on that. I do plan to do separate videos on the Native Americans and the Native Americans and their nations and their peoples. But for now, I want to focus on the Spanish. And the Spanish conquer the Incans, the Aztecs, the Mayans. They conquer all the peoples around. They colonize. They spread. They push up south, hitting most of Argentina. They take Brazil, which goes to Portugal later on. Goes back to Portugal. They push up north to modern day California and other states such as Texas, New Mexico, and many more, and even Louisiana. Take Florida. Their empire is massive, as there'll be a map on a screen showing. Then we get into the systems, I guess, of the Spanish Empire. So one of the systems in place is the system that was used to basically show a social structure, and in its most basic, the social structure went from Spaniards born in Spain, so Spanish people born in Spain and go over to the New World, Spanish people born in the New World, or then below these, then it's people who are half Spanish, half Native American, and half Spanish, half African. So these are the higher groups. Well, obviously the pure Spanish from Spain are the highest, then the people born in the New World, then the groups I mentioned below that, and then you have Native Americans and Africans brought over during the slave trade, which was a big thing, and the Spanish also did. And this was a caste system, and this will come in much later in the next video, but for now, that is all you need to know. Also, yeah, the slave trade was very big. It was a big thing in the Spanish colonies, and it was used for sugar and other things to be grown, and slavery was used on these plantations. And this was a big thing within the Spanish Empire, and it lasted for a long time, longer than it really should have. Actually, it should never have started, but this is how the world be. Also, Spain at a point conquered the Philippines. They claimed most of the African coast. That's why the slave trade happened. They had parts of land in India through companies. They had many islands, and their system was stable for a time. And the main reason for this, and this is why this is going to have a part two, and that's going to be decline, is for now all you need to know is there was a caste system. And another big thing is that the colonists weren't allowed guns. Only the army was allowed guns. So if you were a colonist and you were pushing up, say, into California and other places which were far away from the central government in the Mexican city, the main Mexican city, or the main Spanish governed city in Mexico, which was far away from the frontier borders, sending out colonists who the Spanish didn't give guns to then disappear or get run out of lands that were owned by the Native Americans, due to the fact that the Native Americans and the Spanish didn't have good times, and hoping that the army would come and save you wasn't the most reliable thing. So that was one thing. And also trade. Yeah, basically the colonies were just used to suck out all the resources and send back to Spain. And this is silver and gold and all the other cash crops and other things were sent from the New World to Spain, and this will come very relevant in the next video. But for now, the peak of the Spanish Empire was Reconquista, unification with other Iberian nations, domination over the Holy Roman Empire, and colonization of the New World from California to northern Argentina, and the Philippines and India and the coasts of Africa. And that was probably the peak of the Spanish Empire. And in the next video, we will talk about the fall of the Spanish Empire and that long, arduous decline. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you have anything that I could have done better, which I know I probably could have. This video was a long time coming, I'm not going to lie, and the next one will be out in a couple of days' time. I'll probably have videos in between, and then once these two videos are done, we can talk about Native American nations, the effect that the Spanish slave trade had, and also South American nations and the modern day South American nations and how their histories went. And yeah, if you enjoyed, like I said, please like and subscribe.